Some new Fallout 76 content leaks are not looking too promising for Fallout First subscribers. Newly data-mined information is given a glimpse of the exclusive items that members will still have to pay for. Meanwhile, the Australian Consumer and Competition Commission have ruled that Bethesda's parent company ZeniMax will be required to issue refunds in Australia as a penalty for misleading consumers about their rights. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another industry report. Of course, be sure to like, sub, and ring that bell to keep the algorithm happy. And with that, let's get into Fallout 76. So, Fallout First has been out for a little bit of time now, and surprisingly, people do actually appear to be signing up. Now, official numbers are not readily available, although an unofficial survey conducted in the Fallout 76 community subreddit revealed that 20% of respondents were Fallout First members. Now, of course, this is a limited view of a subsection of the community, and it is the more dedicated community, but it does show that people are signing up for this service. Then also, according to leaker MMOG Fails, it has performed above expectations insofar as Bethesda themselves are concerned. I suppose we shouldn't be overly surprised that Fallout 76, for all its issues, does actually seem to have a dedicated community, and it does make sense that the most dedicated members of that community would be Fallout First subscribers. As with other live service games, data mining though and leaks are a pretty darn big thing for the 76 community. It's something they will, go over quite a lot, so let's get into them because they're actually quite interesting. So, a recent spate of leaks has given players a bit of insight into Bethesda's plans for the premium subscription service, and you know what? It's not that encouraging. Exclusivity really does lie at the heart of Fallout First's appeal for many players, and the service is boasting everything from exclusive items to membership-specific discounts. Now, recent leaks have suggested that while certain upcoming items are available only to Fallout First members, they're still going to need to be purchased by the Fallout First members using atoms. Some data mine information currently doing the rounds on Reddit may give us an idea of how the items are actually going to be distributed to players. So the leak details two categories of items. We've got those that are included with membership in Fallout First, and then those are tagged as an offer that is exclusive to Fallout First members. So this pretty much suggests that yes, some items will be included for free within that new membership, but others are going to be available for purchase only by Fallout First members. Now, you really can see how this could make sense, and also the habit forming here when you think about what Fallout First actually comes with, because one of the major benefits of the Fallout First subscription is the 1,650 atoms that you get every month, and that's, in terms of dollar efficiency, a pretty good rate. Now, by requiring that members purchase, the exclusive items with the atoms, Bethesda essentially are forcing members to use one premium perk to pay for another, and by always drip feeding you those atoms, well, what they essentially do is they give you habit formation, right? And that basically means that people who pay are more likely to pay again in the future, and that is the free-to-play logic where payers tend to pay more, and that means that doubling down on payers instead of, the more free players, well, that is what they're going to do. Of course, this is not a free-to-play game. This is a buy-to-play game, but I suppose what you're really seeing here is a move-in of elements of the MMORPG business model that they've actually been pretty darn successful with Elder Scrolls Online. And as much as that is an explanation for what's going on, I think a lot of non-MMO gamers who are not used to MMO business models do see something like this in what traditionally has been a more single-player type of game, and I think, they're a little bit more thrown for a loop on it than, say, MMO gamers, would be. Because, let's be real, MMO gamers, we certainly have had our fair share of business models over the last 20 years. Now, of course, it's not just that items will be on the store. These sort of items that Bethesda will choose to implement as member exclusives is also the subject of speculation. Now, last week, blog site MMOG Fails claimed that vaulted items are being considered alongside new gear. They speculate that Bethesda are also considering a Try It First program whereby Fallout First members would be able to purchase items before non-members. Now, while it may be a relatively unassuming blog, I will say that MMOG Fails actually have been fairly accurate in the past with leaks, so that's why we're covering them here. Now, they also say that the community is going to have quite a lot of influence over how 76 turns out, which does tie in with what the development team have said about gathering player feedback. Now, the post suggests that Bethesda will continue to push their luck when it comes to, well, basically borderline pay-to-win items in future updates, and that it therefore is up to the community to let their opinions known and try to curtail Bethesda's runaway monetization ambitions. Now, the thing here is that community feedback is always going to be modulated against dollars. And as you can see here, I mean, pretty much like Fallout First was ridiculed across the internet, but what actually happened? The core community still did go for it, right? And that means that Bethesda is going to see that negative feedback, but then they're going to look at their core consumer base. They're going to see that those consumers actually do partake in the microtransactions. And yeah, they're going to think that, okay, well, the community feedback clearly from the people who matter to us, i.e. the paying customers, is that this stuff is okay. And you're probably going to see more and more of it. Now, the part there where I'd worry is you look at the Creation Club in Skyrim and Fallout 4, and then you think about Starfield and the Elder Scrolls 6, and you've got to wonder, those games are probably going to have a Creation Club-like thing, like their past single-player games have done, but with 76 running well, you've got to wonder how much they're going to try to slip in live service elements, and I know that could be seen as a little bit conspiratorial, but being real based on what we've discussed with 76 over the last bunch of months, I mean, I don't think it's an absurd thing to think about. Now, that said, there is one thing I should mention. Bethesda did reverse course by making the Ranger Riot paint available for Fallout First members for free, rather than the previously advertised 500 atoms, so there's that. But of course, the Fallout 76 team, they've been open about saying they're collecting player feedback in the past, so it's realistic they'll continue to gauge player opinion moving forward. That's in line with what MOG Fails actually said. But, then again, Bethesda's last idea for actually implementing a requested change was to charge $13 a month for those changes, and before that it was to put in borderline pay-to-win stuff, so I don't have too much faith in it. With that, let's move on to our next story. So coverage of 76 is often taken up by the more recent missteps, but it is still worth remembering just how much of a disaster the game was on its release day, and this of course led many people to actually ask for refunds. Now, the trouble is that a lot of people were refused those refunds. Now, the problem was that Bethesda's terms of service offered little information beyond just aligning with those of their parent company, ZeniMax. So at the time, ZeniMax's terms of service stipulated that content is not returnable, exchangeable, or refundable once the player had redeemed it. Now, this also did apply to downloaded content, and so players who digitally downloaded Fallout 76 found that, they were ineligible for refunds, pretty much no matter how much of a mess the game actually turned out to be. A pretty absurd situation. Now, the odd thing is that some players reported receiving their refunds with no issues, and this is possibly because of another stipulation in their terms of service that basically allowed for returns in situations, quote, approved by ZeniMax or required by applicable law. So it's one of those clauses that basically lets them do whatever they want. Now, it would appear that this wording allowed for refunds for 76 to be issued, but it was in a pretty inconsistent and discretionary basis, and this left countless players in the lurch, and, obviously the ill sentiment did begin to grow. Now, a Washington, D.C. law firm even got involved at one point, saying they were going to launch an investigation into the refusal of refunds for PC players who purchased their, quote, heavily glitched game, but, that investigation never really led anywhere. Maybe it was just a bit of a PR stunt from the law firm, but it does give you an idea of the state of the 76 launch window. Now, the reason that Bethesda and ZeniMax were initially able to get away with refusing refunds was that they were not formally obliged to fulfill them. On PC, Fallout 76 operated on Bethesda's own launcher, and as such it was governed by Bethesda's terms of service. Now, this is sort of emblematic of the little bit of a dangerous my house, my rules attitude that can sometimes happen with dedicated launchers. Now, if 76, say, had been on Steam, then of course it would have been covered by Valve's pretty good refund policy. Sometimes you gotta wonder, is that one of the reasons why a company would actually not put their game out on Steam if they knew it was going to have significant day one issues? So there's that. Okay, let's get back to the story at hand. So what about that applicable law part of ZeniMax's terms? Well, last week, the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, the ACCC, issued a ruling that Fallout 76 buyers in Australia are actually entitled to a refund. In a statement, the AAC said that ZeniMax Media accepted that their actions were likely to have contravened Australian consumer law, which, really isn't what you want to do. So under Australian law, any product purchased by a consumer comes with an automatic specific consumer guarantee, and, thus retailers must ensure that their refund and return policies are actually compliant with those provisions. Now, if a customer purchases a product which has a fault which amounts to a major failure, then, over in Australia, the Australian law provides them with the right to ask for either a repair, a replacement, or a refund. Now, can the technical state of Fallout 76 at launch be described in any way other than a major failure? I don't really think so. Now, unlike consumer rights advocacy groups in many other countries, what's interesting is that the ACCC works in collaboration with the Australian government, and it actually falls under the portfolio of responsibilities of the Australian Treasury. So, in other words, this would constitute the, applicable law detailed in ZeniMax's terms of service that they, think they likely had contravened. Now, as such, the company are now obliged to offer refunds to Australian customers who contacted them between the 24th of November 2018 and the 1st of June 2019. Then additionally, ZeniMax will also be required to amend their customer service documentation to account for the ACCC's concerns over the misrepresentation of consumer rights under Australian law. I think, as always, Australian law ends up being a little bit tricky for the video games industry. Now, that the ACCC issued a ruling in this may be a little bit surprising to some outside observers, but there is actually some precedent for this kind of intervention. So, in 2014, the ACC actually sued Valve over Steam's then pretty cumbersome refund policy in a case that was, strikingly similar to the Fallout 76 story. Now, the ACCC argued that Valve's refund policy indicated that consumers were not entitled to a refund under any circumstances, and that Valve were under no obligation to repair, replace, or refund a game where the purchaser had not attempted to solve any issues with the game's developer. Now, fast forward a bit, and Australia's federal court actually ruled against Valve in March 2015. Now, by that June, Valve had actually reworked Steam's refund policy into the less than 2 weeks, less than 2 hours policy that we all know today. Then, Valve actually did lose an appeal against the ACC's decision in 2017, but by that point, their policy changes were already in force, though they still actually did have to pay a fine amounting to $2.2 million, which, is pretty much just spare change to Valve. Now, funnily enough, the ACC actually hoped that the resolution of the case against Valve would set an important precedent for other online marketplaces going forward, and, it looks like they were right, and that does pave the way for this ZeniMax situation. And with Red Dead Redemption 2 having significant problems, and there may be being 1 or 2 issues with Rockstar's policy there. They do have the sort of the 14 days or 2 hours of playtime thing, but there are little clauses there about virtual currency and pre-orders and things like that that seem like a little bit of an issue there with their refunds. So, judging by the state of that game on launch, I've got to wonder if they're going to end up facing similar things to what Bethesda and ZeniMax actually dealt with here. But anyway, there you go. That is an update on Fallout First, what they're pretty much doing. A little bit of educated guessing on some of Bethesda's future games, and just some worries there, talking about the sort of inevitability of some things. It's like all the criticism in the world could be thrown at them, but ultimately, if their core audience base buys enough and doesn't really care, they're not really going to have much of a reason to listen. So, that and a little bit of consumer law to round off the day. There may be another video up today, so be sure to check out the channel. But with that, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.